All right, our first interview of the morning. Last week, the government, kind of led by Shane Jones, removed the ban on oil and gas exploration offshore. They had to put that through Parliament in the hope that it will bolster, obviously, exploration, improve our energy self-sufficiency, provide jobs and help the economy get along. The ban was passed in 2018. The legislation removing it passed through Parliament on Thursday night. But the problem we have is that the Greens, Labor say they will simply reimpose the ban if there's a change of government, which means companies which are considering investing in exploration, and it's a damnably expensive business and a long-term business, may not respond the way the government wants because they're saying we cannot trust New Zealand to be consistent on this matter. And that would seem to me to be because we still have believers in catastrophic climate change, which would appear over the last 20 years to have been disproven as a computer model and not to be occurring. The end of the world is not nigh. One MP who spoke passionately in favour of the ban and for a more realistic attitude on climate change and utilising our natural resources was ex-Simon Court, and he joins us by video link now. Simon, good morning to you.
Good morning, Sean, and good morning to platform listeners.
Would it be fair to say that the attitude of the opposition parties really makes the benefits of the removal of the ban pretty tenuous at this stage?
Well, Sean, last week on Thursday, Parliament didn't just reverse the ban on oil and gas exploration. We changed the premise of the Crown Minerals Act that Labor had actually messed with. The Crown Minerals Act, which they changed to ban oil and gas exploration, also says now, instead of just manage Crown Minerals, we're going to promote the use of Crown Minerals, because it's not just oil and gas, it's all of those critical minerals that we need for everything we use and consume, from cell phones to satellites. So what we've done with the reset of the legislation is to say to those businesses that are already here in New Zealand or those that are thinking about coming to invest here, that we are open for business and that we are a safe place to invest and we want to engage. But you're absolutely right. If Labor and the Greens are going to continue with this essentially climate emergency nonsense that they've held on to like a comforter blanket for years and years in the face of reality, then that is a problem. And what I pointed out to them in my speech to the House on Thursday was look across the Tasman to the Australian Labor Party. Despite all of their navel gazing and wondering about climate change, they haven't banned oil and gas exploration. In fact, it's doubled down there. They're going hell for leather on exporting liquefied natural gas mainly to Southeast Asia, Japan and Korea. But they're not giving up on this stuff. And I pointed out to Labor, just look across the ditch and have a bit of a think about what you're doing to the New Zealand economy and what your own Labor mates have said is important about gas.
But selling the message you've got, which I think makes very good sense, is very difficult in an environment where internationally the idea of catastrophic climate change is still adhered to.
Well, here's the other part, the other side of that coin. A lot of businesses have invested, like BP, for example, decided that they would try to achieve some kind of net zero for their business. And they went off buying wind farms and solar farms. They've since decided that's not going to make them any money, and they need to focus on their core business, which is supplying liquid and gas fuels to their customers. And there is no current pathway where oil and gas derivatives, fuels, won't be needed. And I'm talking well beyond this net zero 2050 target. And that's why I think it's important that we see in New Zealand that natural gas is a transition fuel. It's used in manufacturing as well as energy. If we're ever going to achieve this net zero nirvana, we're going to have gas in the mix for a lot longer probably hundreds of years rather than just 20 or 30.
Okay, you have used a phrase there I'm going to jump on, net zero nirvana, and I come back to, isn't net zero fundamentally, if we were going to be honest with ourselves, a crock?
Well,
A false dream.
Well, it's actually legislated in New Zealand law under the Climate Change Response Act. And successive parties in Parliament, including National, which sent some of its leaders off to Paris to sign up to the Paris Climate Accord, patted themselves on the back, not really understanding what the cost of that would be and if it was even possible. And then, of course, we had James Shaw go off to Glasgow and double down on the targets and say that New Zealand was going to halve its emissions by 2030. Well, if we tried to do that, we'd go broke. So look, when we think about a target like net zero, it is essentially aspirational. What it says is that
it's essentially silly and a waste of time, isn't it?
Yeah, but
yes.
I mean, it's
was that a year?
Well, Sean, what I'll say is it's silly if you're going to turn off your entire manufacturing base.
So it's silly and it's a waste of time. Now, you think that. New Zealand First thinks that. You're both in government. Why doesn't this country have the economic and moral courage to say it's silly and stop doing something silly? I'm presuming it's because the National Party don't want to.
Well, we are in a coalition government, Sean, and you make that point that both will certainly act. David Seymour was the only person, the only member of Parliament to vote against the Zero Carbon Act, which was passed in 2018, when New Zealand First and Labour were in government. So we've been absolutely consistent. We haven't flip-flopped like other parties, which, lined up to ban oil and gas.
It's all right occasionally to say you agree with New Zealand First.
Yeah, no, absolutely do, on many matters. And I've enjoyed the opportunity to work closely with Shane Jones on energy and mining policy. A lot of what is in the ACT National Coalition has actually been delivered by Jones.
Then what is stopping this government from ditching the stupidity of net zero right now?
Well, this is a coalition government, Sean. You've pointed that out. You
can use that. But can you just say clearly, for the record, it is the National Party?
Well, Sean, I can't say it's just the National Party.
Well, who else is it besides the National Party? What other party in the coalition government isn't into this?
Well, let me frame it in a slightly different way. We have formed a coalition government around a set of policies, but what each party will do in the lead up to the next election is identify the things that are most important to New Zealanders and go out and campaign on those. And that will be up to each individual party. I think I've made it clear that net zero as a target, as a concept, is aspirational. Anything that we do here in New Zealand that forces up energy prices because the cost of carbon is so high, anything we do here that results in wholesale conversion of farms to carbon forestry, that is unacceptable. This government's actually making some changes in that area.
Will the ACT Party therefore campaign next election on ditching net zero?
We haven't taken any decisions on that, Sean, but I can assure you and your listeners that we are looking at that very carefully. And
would you, as an individual not talking on behalf of your party, like to see ACT campaign on ditching net zero?
Well, Sean, in my first speech to Parliament, that was when Jacinda Ardern declared a climate emergency, and I made a very strong case as to why that's a ridiculous thing to do. It's completely unnecessary environmental.
No, you're not answering the question, and it's a personal question. I'm not getting you in any trouble. Would you like to see ACT have a policy at the next election, campaign on ditching net zero? Yes or no?